Guys, can we talk about how Sony is crushing 2023? We're only just starting in March. And if you haven't been paying attention, um, PS5's coming out party is truly starting now. And we haven't even heard of many of the games that are coming from Sony's first party studios later this year. But let's recap, man. 2023, Sony is killing it. All right, so yeah, man, I had to make a video, man, to talk about this. Now, this generation so far of the consoles, and just gaming in general has been a little unusual to say the least, right? Let's admit that. Obviously, here we are, 2023. The consoles have been on the market now for over 2 years, and there's been part shortages. There's been inventory shortages. You could not find a Series X and especially a PS5. Literally, you could not just go on Amazon or walk into a store and see it. I still honestly have not seen a PS5 on any shelf around me, but I know that it is getting out there. That was the reality, man, for 2 years. Furthermore, we've been living in this cross-generation bubble, I'm gonna call it, so to speak, right? Where the vast majority of games are available on PS5, Series X, and also PS4 and Xbox One. Um, and because of that, a lot of the games haven't really been pushing the envelope, so to speak. They haven't really been leveraging the new consoles and the new architectures that are possible with SSDs and ray tracing and higher fidelity graphics and faster CPUs, et cetera, et cetera. We haven't seen it. Even looking back at Sony's 2022, which was a great year for games, their biggest games, God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West, were cross-gen. They also were available on the PS4. All right. So we've seen it impacted, and also games today and in this generation in general are just super complex and expensive to make. So we're also just seeing, I would say, a lower output of games. Games are just taking way longer to make. So we just have to wait for that next big game. We have to wait for the next, version, the next sequel of a game a lot longer than we've had to in the past. So all of this combined just means that we have some great machines that can play games pretty well. Many of games running at 60 frames per second or higher. We got 120 frames per second being a thing now. We got 4K being a thing now. We got different performance modes being a thing now. We have real-time ray tracing being a thing now. And this is all great, but the games themselves are generally the same games we've been playing for the last decade or more. But 2023, we knew that this was kind of going to be the year that I think the current gen consoles are really going to start to separate themselves from the last gen on both Microsoft and Sony side. But man, we're already just in March, and there is so much activity happening on the Sony side. It really just feels like they just been sitting back, building up, working, being patient, trying to get their supply up, trying to get their studios time to get the games in order. But we're starting to see the fruits of that labor. And man, it looks like exciting times if you're a PlayStation fan. So let me just go back and recap what's been happening since January 1st, 2023 primarily, okay? What have we learned? First of all, Sony has finally gotten ahead of their supply issues, okay? And PS5s are readily available. This is important because no question that the PS5 sales have been hampered by their supply issues. They haven't been able to make enough PS5s to meet the demand that was out there. If they had been able to, if it hadn't been a part shortage, and God knows if it hadn't been a pandemic, PS5 sales probably could have been on the order of 2 times what they are now, which would make it, far and away, the fastest selling PlayStation ever. It's still selling really, really well. It's approaching 40 million units. I know it's well above 30 million already in 2 years. That's not bad, but it could have been a lot more. But now we're seeing that. And since January, Sony has announced PS5 stock is readily available. It's the first time since the system has been a release that you can actually just go on Amazon without any kind of pre-order, without any kind of anything. Just go on Amazon.com, look at PS5, and actually see some in stock. I mean, yeah, it's still selling out, but it's there. It has been there and it's readily available. You can go into a Best Buy, you can go into a Walmart and see a PS5 and get it. And what that means is sales have skyrocketed, guys, especially in the homeland in Japan. Up until this point, the PS5 has been largely irrelevant in Japan, which is kind of ironic and sad, right? Because that's their homeland. And, the Japanese studios are still working hard. They're still pumping out games. Capcom's, Konami's, Square Enix, they're still doing their thing. Clearly, the biggest markets are out west now, but Japan has been just Switchland, like literally just Switchland. Switch has been killing it. It's almost been the only thing. Top 10 games every month has been only Switch games. PS5, by and large, was selling on the order of like 10,000 units a week there, which is fairly low, honestly. Again, the system has been out there for over 2 years. Now, what we're seeing is the last few weeks, PS5 has been selling well over 50,000 units per week. And a couple of weeks approaching up to 100,000 units per week. And in fact, the PS5 has been, for the past few weeks, the number one selling console in Japan. And that shows you what's possible. Mind you, they haven't even released a lot of the bigger Japanese games that are still to come. Games like Final Fantasy 16 and games like, Project Stellar Blade, I believe is what it's called now. That looks really good. It's very like Japanese centric, and it looks really, really cool. It looks like it's taking advantage of PS5 technology. Visuals look great, SSD loading, that kind of thing. But that's coming later this year. Final Fantasy is coming later this year. Capcom is still going to keep crunching out some stuff. Resident Evil 4 remake is coming this month in March, and they have other stuff coming. So Street Fighter 6 is coming out in the summer as well. So PS5 is going to have some big guns coming, and I'm sure there's going to be more. Now the hardware sales and the stock is going to be able to support that. PS5 has been number one also in Europe as well, pretty much all of 2023, and in the US. Again, stock is there. It is killing it, guys. As part of that, we've seen the PS5 marketing campaign really go into high gear. There have been a number of PS5 games, and I'll talk about that in a second, that has been released. PS5 marketed games, Sony marketed games that has come out, and they've been doing that. But they also have this really cool new ad campaign called Live from PS5. And I'm showing some of it here, but it looks really cool. They've been doing that to just basically say, look, first of all, PS5 is now here. It's now available. They have the first one of these videos were basically just saying, PS5 is now available. You can go and buy it now in the store. I think the way they said it in the ad is, we've seen a market uptick on some of these PS5 activities, because again, it's just more available now. And it's pretty cool. I actually think it's a really cool campaign. And it's been out there, online, TV ads, you see it. So that makes sense. It seems like they haven't really been talking too much about PS5. They haven't had to. And now, stock, they're going to be really pushing that in. There's more about marketing to come. Then, of course, let's just talk about the games that has come out since 2023. We've seen a couple of either PS5 console exclusive games or just new gen exclusive games that were led by Sony and led by PS5. First of all, starting with Forspoken. This is a PS5 and PC only game. It's not on Xbox yet. It was one of those games that Sony showed early on that was supposed to be one of the big ones for PS5. Truth be told, the game actually pales into what was initially shown, especially on a technical level. That said, Sony marketed the hell out of the game. Everywhere you turn, it was a TV ad for it. I still see TV ads for it. A lot of people have gotten the game and enjoyed it. I didn't get it. I tried to demo it. It just didn't seem like it was up to snuff. Square has a lot of work to do, I think, to update that game. It had a lot of promise, but either way, it still has its charm, and it does something unique, and it could be some fun. So people are getting it, playing it. Of course, the big gun in going on in 2023 is Hogwarts Legacy. Now, Hogwarts Legacy isn't a PlayStation exclusive game, but Sony owns the marketing rights. It is led on PlayStation. Is the PlayStation 5 is the lead platform, and they actually split the release. It is a cross-gen game, but they split the release where only the current gen game version released first, and then the last gen version, the PS4, Xbox One, will release later in this summer, a couple of months from now. That's interesting. That tells you everything you need to know. Obviously, they were focusing on the current gen platforms and trying to utilize the SSD and the newer technology. It's going to be hard to get that game to fit in last gen. I can tell you that right now. It's coming. We'll see how it turns out. But if you are a PlayStation 5 gamer, it's there, readily available. It runs in best on PlayStation 5. It has PlayStation 5 exclusive content that you can only get there. So, and then again, it's when you see the advertising for it, you see Sony and PlayStation 5 name in the ad. Needless to say, this is going to be one of the biggest selling games of the generation, definitely of this year, and it's selling most on PS5 by far. It's selling well on PC, it's selling well on Xbox, but it's selling mostly on PS5, as you would expect. So Sony is reaping the rewards there. Furthermore, we are seeing some cool stuff that Sony has announced game-wise. First of all, GT7. Let's talk about GT7. GT7 saw a huge update that added a little bit of everything. First thing it added, and I'll talk about this, is PlayStation VR 2 support. We're going to talk about that, but it's one of the biggest exclusive games for PlayStation 2 VR. Huge critical reception. People are loving it, saying it's one of the best VR experiences that they've ever had, saying it's one of not the best racing experience you can have in VR, etc., etc. It's a free update if you own GT7, so that's going to make more people want to buy GT7 and going to bring more attention to that game. It turns out to be pretty well. But the same update in GT7 also added a great new course in Grand Hill Valley that looks amazing. They added several new cars, a couple of Vision GT cars, and some other, highly acclaimed cars. They also added this really, really cool, innovative thing, man. They added something called GT Sophie. GT Sophie is an actual learning AI. Okay, this is a learning artificial intelligence that Sony's AI division has been working and pioneering in conjunction and in partnership with Polyphony Digital, who makes the Gran Turismo games. They talked about this last year, but now they actually added it to the game. So this is huge, guys. This is like, we haven't seen anything like this in a game. This is a real learning AI that is controlling the other cars, and you can really see the difference. I've tried it. If you haven't tried it, just try it. It's a separate mode right now. It's not like dispersed throughout the entire game. It's kind of just a proof of concept, but try it. Try to see if you can beat that AI in expert mode. It changes and adapts to your playstyle, and it doesn't drop anything like the in-game AI that comes standard with the game, just running algorithms on the CPU. This is really cool, man. We haven't seen anything like this from Xbox, from Nintendo, or in the console space at all. So it just shows some innovation. Sony's just doing some things and bringing it to market. Is real, is there. And so in general, GT7 is in a much better place. Even though it came out a year ago, sales are increasing. AI features, VR features, full new tracks, a whole lot of new content, way more cars. Check it out. Is doing some big things. We know that Horizon Forbidden West has a new DLC coming, I think in April or May, coming pretty soon here. That is PS5 only. So even though the game itself is cross-gen, this new DLC is PS5 only. That's pretty cool. Game-wise, yeah, Spider-Man 2 is coming this year. We still have yet to really see the full unveil, but it's coming. Suicide Squad is recently was part of Sony's State of Play. So Sony did a State of Play. They showed a big chunk of Suicide Squad. The reception to that hasn't been as positive, but the game is still not out. We'll see what happens. This is from Rocksteady that has done the Arkham series, which were huge, highly acclaimed games of the last generation. I have faith in them. We'll see what happens. But the game is current gen only, and it is led by Sony and PS5. So coming later this summer, we shall see. Final Fantasy 16, which is my most anticipated game of 2023. There recently was a round of previews embargo that got lifted, I think, a couple of days ago. So there's a lot more out there. They've shown the gameplay. It looks amazing. It's much more action oriented. It really looks like God of Final Fantasy. I mean, it's God of War with Final Fantasy, more so like God of War 3. Huge scale, huge creatures. It's just everything about it is massive. I love the focus on the summon creatures. I love the focus on the action. And of course, it's going to have a lot of RPG elements as well. But man, they look like they're really going all in. PS5 and PC exclusive, they really work with Sony engineers to optimize that game for PS5. So we shall see, I think, really, really highly detailed worlds, characters, utilizing SSD seamlessly, no load times, and just huge, huge scale. It already mentioned they'll have a 30 hertz like high resolution mode and then a 60 hertz mode as well. So it will have a 60 FPS mode. We'll see. Hopefully the performance is good. But man, check out that one. That has to be one of the, has the potential to be one of the biggest games of the year by far. Another big Sony thing happening is in 2023, the release of The Last of Us TV show. Now this is a TV show, but this is important. This is by PlayStation Studios. And it is getting a huge reception. It's obviously one of the biggest shows of the year so far. It's probably going to end up being one of the biggest shows of the year when it's all said and done. Huge reception. There's a lot of people watching the show that did not know about the Last of Us game. They didn't even know that it existed. They didn't know the show was based on the game. The sales of The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 on PS4 and PS5 have skyrocketed since that show has been out. Word of mouth has just been going crazy regarding The Last of Us and comparison to the game versus the show. Even my wife has gone to work. She works as a pharmacist. And she's going into the office and people are talking about the show. And people are like, man, my son, my cousin, my nephew, my dad plays the game. And I started playing the game. And the game does this and does that. And she's learning more, even though she watched me play the game. But she's learning more about the game and how it compares. She's really interested, invested in it. This is a huge thing for Sony overall. This is only going to bring more eyes and more sales, which it has, to not only the game, not only the franchise, but to, you guessed it, PS4 and PS5. And again, it is also just part of the story of how PlayStation has been really out there. Marketing campaign, again, new ad, big games that you see ads for all the time. Hogwarts ads are everywhere. Forspoken ads were everywhere. Big stuff happening. Last of Us is a huge story. Naughty Dog has the fever. They feel it. So expect to see a lot more Last of Us things coming soon. So yet another pillar where Sony has been killing it so far in 2023 is PlayStation Plus. So PlayStation Plus hasn't really, been much in the headlines of late. But ever since last year when Sony added the whole tier system, which is, I guess, their answer to Game Pass, although it's obviously not exactly the same, intentionally so. But they have 2 updates a month, right? They have the PlayStation Essentials update, which is kind of what they always had, the 2 to 4-ish games that they would make available for free for PlayStation Plus members. But now they also have, in the middle of the month, a update where they add games to their PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium tiers. And for those are games that are, that's their Game Pass catalog, essentially. Games that get the service, you get access to hundreds and hundreds of games. Since they launched last year, it hasn't really been much to talk about there. Most people just lamented the idea that the new releases, day one releases, weren't there. So like when God of War Ragnarok came out, it wasn't there. In general, like the list of games were generally older games, right? But this has been considered, in the month of February, has been considered the best month for PlayStation Plus since the tier system started. First of all, they added Horizon Forbidden West, almost a year to the day when it released. And that's interesting. I'm sure that's not coincidence. So they, get the best of both worlds. They get a year of the title out where they can get the sales and people that really want it, will pay for it. And then they put it on the service, and now people that get the service, they'll have access to the full game for free, a la Game Pass. So that's cool. That's a big one, obviously, to have on there. They also added a trial for God of War Ragnarok. So that's part of the PlayStation, Plus, the premium, the highest one, where you get access to these game trials. So a few hours of the game, you can download it and try. Basically, do the intro section essentially, and get a chance to feel like, is it worth it to you or not, right? So that's a big one to have on there. Again, God of War is only a few months old, so they're not going to release it fully on PlayStation Plus because, again, they want to give a little bit of time for the game to just kind of get its natural sales. But having a trial, helps people decide if they really want it or not. So it's pretty cool. Other big games in this 1 month alone, there are games like Resident Evil 7 that's available on there now. They're including the PS5 update with ray tracing support and everything. There's games like Borderlands 3, Outriders, the Query is up on there now. This is all in the same month. Scarlet Nexus, which is a cool action game from Capcom. Tekken 7, Ace Combat 7 are both up there as well. So this is all, I might be missing a couple, but this is all in 1 month. Generally considered the best month of the service so far. Lots of cool games, lots of big games, fun games, some PS4 gems, and then some bigger PS5 updates that were there as well. So that was a big thing. Of course, can we talk about the elephant in the room? PlayStation VR 2, a whole entirely new piece of hardware, a new platform, has also been launched by Sony. And the reception has been overwhelmingly good, to be honest, right? Now, this is an accessory to PlayStation 5. You need a PlayStation 5 to use PlayStation VR 2 for better and worse. Some people lament that because they really want it to be on PC where they can play it on PC and use all their PC games. Sony is making, obviously, more games available on the PC, but they haven't gone quite that far yet. They're still primarily in the console business. You need a PS5. So when you look at PSVR 2, and anything there that you want to try, you want to play, you hear the reviews, a lot of people are like, no, I'm not getting it. PSVR was okay, but, it had its issues. In general, I'm not big on VR. VR has kind of seemed to have died down a bit. Quest did big numbers, and Quest was cool. Quest 2 is there. There's some high-end VR stuff there, but it just seems to have kind of died down. It's like it kind of reached its peak, which wasn't really that high, and then it kind of fizzled out. But Sony's not giving up. PlayStation VR 2 has gotten a overwhelmingly positive reception from the hardware. The actual hardware technology, everyone has agreed that it is a huge jump, huge improvement over the first PlayStation VR in every way, shape, and form. Everything about it. The starting with the controllers, the inputs, is way better than the PlayStation VR solution. It matches something more closely to what you would find on a high-end VR solution on the PC. Has hand tracking, has finger tracking. It has haptics, which is unique to PlayStation VR and PlayStation in general. The DualSense haptic feedback is in the controller. Is also in the headset. The headset is completely redesigned. No need for an external camera anymore. It has cameras on the headset that do the inside-out tracking of your hands and of the space. That way, it's a lot more efficient. The hardware, the PS5 obviously is way more powerful than the PS4, so the games themselves look and run much better. The headset itself has way higher resolution. Each eye essentially has 4K resolution into each eye. It's an OLED screen as well, so the contrast and HDR capable. It does everything you could think of. Tempest Engine does 3D audio in real time. Sounds awesome. Again, the headset itself also has the haptic feedback, so you feel vibrations in the head, in your hands, which is unique to PlayStation VR. The hardware is a single cord now. PlayStation VR is almost laughable. It's a joke of a mess of wires which you needed to get that thing to work on PlayStation 4. This is simply one single cord to your PS5. You're done, and it just works. And everything about it looks great. It has eye tracking as well to literally track the movements of your eyes, which you can use to make the graphics look better where you're looking. You can also use it to actually navigate the menu and even navigate the games. It's insane. Top of the line, state of the art VR solution. It's expensive. It's actually more than a PlayStation 5 console, if you believe it or not. It's $550. And because of that, Sony looks at it as a premium niche kind of product. They're not looking at this as trying to sell millions and millions right off the bat, but they're just trying to get it right. and I think they've done that. I didn't get it yet. I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm waiting to see what other content comes out. But at launch, you got GT7, like I just mentioned, that people are raving about. You have Resident Evil 8 Village, horror game, fully playable in this VR, which again I'm hearing is amazing. You have a new Horizon spinoff game called Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is probably the closest thing to a tech demo you'll have. It looks amazing. It uses every technology, the eye tracking, the hand tracking, everything into that game. There's a whole lot of other just VR staple games, a lot of PlayStation VR 1 games that have been ported to PlayStation VR 2. It's not backwards compatible with PlayStation VR 1 because the technology is so different. So there's, I think, over 30 games technically that's available to play on PlayStation VR 2 at launch. And then hopefully there'll be a lot more bigger things coming. But this is a whole new launch. And again, just it got people talking. People are excited. A lot of people were not expecting anything more from VR. I mean, they were kind of done with VR. And from what I'm hearing, a lot of people that I've heard that have tried it are just like, man, I've tried, Gran Turismo in VR. I cannot go back to playing it on a regular TV. Like, is that good? Is that different? Is that immersive? Resident Evil 8 is like, this is the only way I can play this game. I've heard people say that, right? So, kudos to Sony again for just pushing things forward and doing that. So next up for Sony's amazing Q1 so far for 2023, can't forget the DualSense Edge. So this is Sony's first ever Pro controller. First ever. This is significant, right? So they've been third-party PlayStation Pro controllers of sorts. Obviously, Microsoft has the Xbox Elite and Elite Series 2 controllers out. Sony has never had that. So they finally have delved in, and the results are really good. It's an expensive piece of kit, no question. I think it's technically is MSRP of $200. The biggest issue with it is the battery life. And I mean, for me, I can barely get like one, maybe 2 sessions of gaming before it has to recharge. We're talking like, I would say 4 to 5 hours is pretty much is blinking on the one dot for me. Regular DualSense for me is usually closer to like somewhere around 7 to 9 hours maybe. So this is like noticeably less, I'm telling you. Most people that got the DualSense Edge have said they can't go back. They can't go back to using a regular DualSense. But let's talk about the performance. A lot of the games that I just mentioned that are cross-platform, games like Atomic Heart, games like Wild Heart, games like Hogwarts Legacy. Those are 3 games that all came out in the February timeframe that have all performed noticeably better on PlayStation 5 over a series. And that's another thing about, again, not dramatically better. It's not like the Xbox version is bad, and if you have an Xbox or only have an Xbox or just prefer Xbox, you'll get it there. It'll be generally fine. But again, there always has been this underlying narrative this gen that the Xbox Series is the more powerful box, solely based on specs. Now, based on specs, you can look at some of the numbers and look at the number of CUs in the GPU, and look at the number of teraflops, and look at the clock speed on the CPU, and look at the bandwidth for the memory, and say, yeah, Xbox numbers are larger. But the reality is, PlayStation 5 is smarter. It's a smarter system versus kind of more of a brute force system with the Xbox. And in practice, in reality, we have seen it. We've seen them trade blows, no doubt. But we've seen a number of games that just run better, run faster, or run more consistently on PS5. We've seen it. We've seen it since launch. And people kept, dismissing it, talking about, oh, we need time, tools, blah, blah, blah. And now, we look at some of these big cross-gen only games back to back to back, and so far that has run better on PlayStation. Now, Hogwarts, you would say, yes, that's Sony funded. That's going to run better. It does run, and again, it kind of trade blow. Xbox has some modes that it runs a little bit better in, but generally speaking, PlayStation 5 is the better place to play that game. But what about Atomic Heart? Atomic Heart actually is a Microsoft marketed game. It runs better on PlayStation. Noticeably better on PlayStation. Now, there's a lot of technical reason for that. I'm not going to go into all of that now. But needless to say, this is just part of the overall momentum and overall word of mouth that Sony has had in the first 2 months of the year. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Sony, keep it up. As a PlayStation owner myself, I'm looking forward to it. I'm enjoying it. Hopefully you guys are too. Microsoft and Nintendo, keep doing your thing. Keep doing your thing. Nintendo, obviously, Breath of the Wild is coming out. No question. Switch is going to be what it is. But we're looking forward to the next Switch. Come on, Nintendo. We're looking forward to it's time. We're looking forward to the new Switch. So we'll see what happens there. True Techno Gamer, signing off. Like, subscribe. Please, I appreciate the support. I'm trying to keep the channel growing. Trying to keep content coming. So give me that love. I'll give it back to you guys. Till next time. Thanks again.